Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have Sara Mehle, Index Research Strategist with Nasdaq Global Indexes, to discuss performance in the Nasdaq-100 with the first quarter of 2023 coming to a close. And Sara, there was just fireworks virtually every day for the first quarter of 2023. Take us through your first slide and the performance that we've seen.
Absolutely, Jill. This has been a very interesting quarter. I feel like it's been a wild ride. But it's really nice to see these numbers. We do still have an hour left, in the trading day before we officially close out the quarter. But these numbers on your screen are through yesterday's close. So even without today's move, which, we've seen over a 1% move in the Nasdaq-100 Index, we're up 18.8%. While the S&P 500 is up 6%. And what I found really interesting is even the Nasdaq-100 X Tech, so taking out those tech names, still is up 6.5%, outperforming the S&P 500. So not just necessarily those tech names that are driving things forward. We saw Russell 2000 about flat, up about 0.8, and then the Dow right now showing here negative 0.3. But I did notice today that with today's rally, it is about flat as well. So we now are seeing the Nasdaq-100 Index up through right now, so 3 o'clock on Friday, 20.3% for the quarter. So today's been a very strong day, and it's continued to be strong. We've seen the Nasdaq-100 really take off over the last few weeks. You can kind of see it visually on that chart. That blue line just really has it was moving in line with everything else. Now it's really just taken off. But yeah, so this is a really exciting thing to talk about after the last few years.
Yeah, well, I mean, especially it doesn't have financial exposure. And of course, what was happening in the financial sector was lending to part of that outperformance. But Sara, I think it's a great data point that you pulled without the companies where there's so much of a heavyweight or that tech area, that it's still up nicely for the year. With such a strong quarter so far, how does it stack up to other quarters?
Absolutely, and I think it's really important to point out that it's not just what you own, but it's sometimes what you don't own. So absolutely with the no financial exposure. But the Nasdaq-100 Index just celebrated its 38th birthday a few months ago. So this, as of today's close, will log its 153rd quarter. So I went back in time and looked at total returns, looking at each quarter just to see, how this might stack up in comparison to past years. And so this quarter, what we're about to finish, is going to be the best quarter on record since the March 2020 bottom. So the quarter ending on June 30th, 2020, which I think is a very interesting data point there. But going back in time, it looks like we're going to settle in right around, maybe even take the 9th or 10th spot here, looking at the top 15. With the number one being, December 31st, 1999, return of 54%. We see other events in here, tech bubble after 9/11, after the great financial crisis, and after COVID. So I think that, this ending up now in the top 6% of the best quarters in the Nasdaq-100 history is pretty notable.
All right. And if we take a look at it on the individual stock level, what can you discern from that?
Yes, I want to just poke around and see, what was actually driving inside. And so, the top contributing stock based on its weight, Apple has a 12% stock, or 12% weighting in the Nasdaq-100. It returned, again, through yesterday's close, 25.15%. So based on that weighting, it contributed 2.9% to overall performance. So that was the top contributor. When we looked at the top total return name, it was NVIDIA, up through yesterday's close, a little over 87%, which I thought was astronomical. I was not expecting that. It does have a weighting of 4.32%. So with that math, it contributed 2.87%. So it is right in line with Apple. I will be interested to see if that did surpass it today. And then looking kind of on the laggard side of things, Honeywell has a 1.13 weight. It was down 11%. So its contribution actually dragged the Nasdaq-100 Index by 15 basis points. And then SiriusXM was the worst performing stock within the Nasdaq-100 Index. Again, on a total return basis, down almost 32%, but its weighting of just 16 basis points, it only drags the index 6 basis points again through yesterday's close. So those are those leaders and laggards. Again, those tech names at the top, some of those other, not so techy names there at the bottom. But, we really are excited to see this quarter. We made history books, and again, we still have an hour left, but, I'm going to keep the positive vibes going.
All right. I'm there with you, Sarah. Thanks for the insight. As always, thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.